The Great Rift had torn reality open like a wound across the galaxy's heart, and through that wound came screaming things that had no business in any sane universe. The cicatrix maledictum pulsed with the malevolent energies of the four ruinous powers, each vying for dominance in the apocalyptic storms that split the Imperium in half. But buried within the cacophony of demonic howls and the death screams of a billion worlds, two names echoed that belonged to neither Khorne nor Tzeentch, Nurgle nor Slaanesh. Names spoken in a language that predated even the war in heaven, forged in conflicts that burned in dimensions the Chaos Gods had never touched. LILITH DIABLO. The dimensional breach manifested above Ophelius 7, a cardinal world in the segmentum obscurus, where the Adepta Sororitas maintained their second-largest fortress monastery. The world was already burning. A Black Legion warband had descended 3 weeks prior, corrupting the planetary governor and opening warp rifts across 7 continents. Sisters of Battle fought street to street in the holy city of sanctified martyrdom, their bolters singing hymns of hatred against the traitor Astartes and the demon hordes spilling through reality's cracks. Then the sky turned the color of old blood and nightmare. The warp rift that tore open above the city wasn't the sickly green of Nurgle or the screaming pink of Slaanesh's domain. It was deeper, older. A crimson darkness shot through with veins of black lightning that seemed to drink light rather than emit it. From within came 2 presences so ancient and malevolent that even the demons already rampaging through the city paused, their warp-born instincts screaming warnings their masters hadn't prepared them for. Lilith manifested first, her form coalescing from blood and shadow in the ruined plaza before the cathedral of the Emperor's divine mercy. She was beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful. Curved horns swept back from a face that could have been human if not for the eyes that held the weight of millennia and the casual cruelty of a being who had birthed civilizations only to watch them devour themselves. Her pale skin seemed to glow against the darkness, and where her bare feet touched the consecrated ground, the blessed stones cracked and bled. She looked up at the burning sky, at the Gothic spires belching smoke, at the distant sounds of bolter fire and screaming, and smiled. "So this is where we've fallen," she murmured, her voice carrying across the plaza like a mother's lullaby sung over a mass grave. Another world of my children, suffering needlessly. How familiar. 100 meters away, reality twisted again, and terror itself took form. Diablo's manifestation was violence made flesh. The Lord of Terror erupted from the ground in an explosion of hellfire and bone, his massive form towering over the ruined buildings. Horns like obsidian spears jutted from his skull, his body a nightmare fusion of demon and dragon, wrapped in armor that seemed forged from cooled magma and the petrified screams of the damned. Eyes like burning coals fixed on Lilith with hatred that had endured through countless ages and dimensions. "You," he snarled, his voice the sound of mountains grinding together and civilizations falling. The word itself carried such weight of malice that nearby rubble disintegrated into dust. "Even cast into this wretched realm, I find you poisoning existence with your presence." Lilith turned to face her ancient enemy, and her smile widened. "Diablo, how perfectly tiresome. We've been torn from sanctuary and hurled into whatever this nightmare is, and still you can think of nothing but our eternal dance. I think of your destruction, mother of abominations, as I have always..." The prime evil's threat died as both entities suddenly realized they were not alone. A battle sister stood in the cathedral doorway, her power armor scorched black from weeks of constant warfare, her bolter raised and rock steady despite the fact she was aiming at 2 beings that radiated power enough to make the warp itself recoil. Behind her visor, Sister Superior Margaret of the Order of the Sacred Rose calculated her chances of survival at approximately 0. but she had not survived 3 decades of fighting the Emperor's enemies by concerning herself with survival. "Abominations!" she roared, her voice amplified by her armor's vox casters. "In the name of the God Emperor of mankind, I declare you demon princes of the ruinous powers, you will be purged from his holy ground." She opened fire. The blessed bolts screamed across the plaza, each round inscribed with litanies of hatred and consecrated in the blood of martyrs. They would have torn apart a lesser demon and wounded even a greater one. Lilith waved her hand almost dismissively, and the rounds simply ceased to exist mid-flight, unmade by will alone. "Demon Prince? Child, I am no one's servant. You are an affront to the Emperor's sight," Margaret interrupted, her faith and armor more impenetrable than ceramite. She switched to her blessed flamer. "You will burn as all heretics burn." Promethium ignited, blessed flame roaring toward the Blood Mother. Diablo moved with shocking speed for something his size, interposing himself between Lilith and the flames, not to protect her, but to demonstrate his power. The fire washed over him and he drank it in, absorbing the consecrated heat and channeling it back as raw terror. The psychic assault hit the Sister Superior like a tidal wave of nightmare. Visions of the Emperor's corpse rotting on the golden throne, of terror consumed by demons, of everything she'd ever fought for, revealed as futile lies. Sister Margaret took one step back, then another. Then her faith reasserted itself like a fortress gate slamming shut, and she steadied. "Impressive," Diablo rumbled, genuinely surprised. "Your species has some spine in this realm." "We are humanity," Margaret spat, "and we do not kneel to demons." Lilith laughed, a sound like crystal breaking. "Humanity? Oh, daughter, I am the mother of your entire—" She paused, sensing something wrong. This wasn't sanctuary. These weren't Nephalem. These were something else. Human, yes, but different. Diminished. Yet their faith burned so bright it almost hurt to perceive. Before anyone could speak again, the sky lit with the distinctive blue-white contrails of drop pods screaming through atmosphere. The Imperium had noticed, and what came next would make their arrival seem gentle by comparison. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. The drop pods struck the plaza like the fist of an angry god, cratering the already broken ground and sending up clouds of pulverized stone and ash. Each pod was emblazoned with the icons of the Ultramarines chapter, the Omega symbol of Robot Guilliman's Gene Sons, defenders of humanity and enforcers of the Codex Astartes. These were the post-human warriors of the Adeptus Astartes, and they had been fighting the Black Legion incursion for 17 days without rest. What emerged from those pods were not men. They were weapons given human shape. Primaris Space Marines, taller and broader than their firstborn brothers, armored in MKX power armor that hummed with the blessings of the Omnissiah. Each was worth 100 mortal soldiers. Each had been fighting in the Emperor's wars since before some planetary governors were born. And each of them looked upon Lilith and Diablo with the cold assessment of those who have killed demons by the thousands. Captain Titus of the Ultramarines, Second Company, stepped forward, his plasma pistol already charging with lethal blue light, his power sword crackling with the disruption field that had cleaved through demon princes and chaos lords alike. His helmet lenses fixed on the two entities with tactical precision that calculated kill vectors and threat assessment in microseconds. Unknown hostiles manifesting greater demon-equivalent power signatures. He voxed to his squad. Immediate containment and purge protocols. For Guilliman and the Emperor. For the Emperor! His brothers roared in unison, bolters raised. Diablo turned to face the Space Marines, and for the first time since arriving in this dimension, the Lord of Terror felt something unfamiliar: uncertainty. These warriors carried no fear he could taste. Their minds were fortresses of indoctrination and psycho-conditioning. Where he should have sensed terror at his presence, he found only granite-hard determination and absolute faith. Interesting, he rumbled, hellfire gathering around his claws. These are no mere mortals. Lilith's eyes narrowed as she studied the Ultramarines. She could sense their genetic modifications, the alien organs grafted into their bodies, the way they'd been shaped from childhood into living weapons. It reminded her of the Nephalem she'd created, humans elevated beyond humanity itself. But these were different, diminished in some ways, enhanced in others, and absolutely loyal to this emperor they spoke of. "Stand down," she commanded, her voice resonating with the authority of one who had commanded the first civilization. "We are not your enemies. I am Lilith, Mother of Sanctuary, and I seek only to—" "Silence, demon," Captain Titus interrupted, his voice flat and emotionless through his helmet's Vox grill. "Your lies hold no power here. You will be destroyed, or you will be banished. The Emperor protects, but we are his angels of death." The Ultramarines opened fire. Bolter rounds, 998 caliber mass-reactive shells, screamed across the plaza in a perfectly coordinated volley. Each round was designed to penetrate armor, bury itself in the target, and then detonate. Against mortal enemies, they reduced bodies to red mist. Against demons, when blessed by the chaplains, they forced the warp spawn back into the Imperium. Lilith moved like liquid shadow, her form blurring as she dodged between the explosive rounds. Where she couldn't dodge, she erected barriers of crystallized blood that caught the bolts and detonated them prematurely. But these warriors weren't aiming randomly. They were herding her, pushing her toward a kill zone where Captain Titus waited with his plasma pistol. Diablo simply roared and charged forward, his massive frame absorbing the bolter rounds. They hurt. These weapons were blessed, their machine spirits aligned against the demonic. But pain was an old friend to the Lord of Terror. He weathered the storm and backhanded a Primaris Marine hard enough to send the warrior flying through a ruined wall. The Space Marine was back on his feet in seconds, armor cracked but already auto-sealing. Enhanced physical resilience confirmed. Adjusting tactics. 3 Ultramarines switched to melta-guns, the weapons hissing as they built up the thermal charge that could reduce even tank armor to molten slag. The beams lanced out, superheated air shimmering as reality itself struggled with the temperatures. Diablo raised his arm, and the melta beams bent, twisted by raw terror made manifest. He was the Lord of Fear. Reality itself could be made to fear, to flinch, to hesitate. The beams curved around him and struck the ground, turning stone to lava. Captain Titus didn't hesitate. While Diablo was distracted, he fired his plasma pistol at Lilith. The superheated plasma bolt was impossible to dodge at this range. It struck her in the chest, and she screamed, the first genuine sound of pain either entity had made. The Emperor's warriors had weapons that could hurt them, that could kill them if given enough time. Lilith's scream wasn't just sound, it was psychic agony that rippled across the battlefield. Sister Margaret, still holding her position at the cathedral, felt her eardrums rupture. 3 Ultramarines staggered as their psycho-conditioning struggled against the assault, and in the distance, across the burning city, something else noticed. The Black Legion warp sorcerer, who had been orchestrating the demonic incursion, felt the psychic shockwave and smiled behind his ornate helmet. 2 new powers had entered the battlefield, powers that didn't belong to any of the 4 gods. This was opportunity. "Master," he voxed to the Chaos Lord leading the warband. "New players have joined the game. Neither loyalist nor of our pantheon." "Interesting," came the reply, thick with corruption and the mechanical rasp of a voice that had spent 10,000 years screaming litanies to chaos. "Perhaps they can be turned or destroyed. Either serves our purpose." Back in the plaza, Lilith rose from where the plasma bolt had knocked her down, the wound in her chest already closing, but slowly, far slower than it should have. This realm's weapons could hurt her, could potentially kill her if she wasn't careful. She looked at Diablo, who was locked in combat with 4 Ultramarines, his claws tearing through ceramite but taking bolt rounds in return. Their eyes met across the battlefield. Ancient enemies, eternal adversaries, but in this moment, both realized the same terrible truth. They were no longer the apex predators. In this nightmare galaxy, they were just 2 more threats to be purged by fanatics who knew nothing of mercy or negotiation. "Truce!" Lilith called out, her voice carrying over the weapon's fire. Diablo hurled an Ultramarine through a building and snarled his response. "Temporary. When these zealots are dealt with, we settle our own accounts." Agreed. They moved as one, centuries of fighting each other having taught them each other's patterns. Lilith erected a barrier of crystallized blood while Diablo channeled hellfire through it, creating a wall of burning crimson that forced the Ultramarines to fall back and regroup. In that moment of respite, both entities released their full power simultaneously. The warp screamed. Lilith's blood magic erupted across the plaza, transmuting stone to flesh, flesh to blood, blood to power. Diablo's terror aura expanded like a nuclear blast, a wave of pure nightmare that would have driven lesser beings to instant madness. Together, their combined power was reality-shaking. But this was the 41st millennium. Reality had been shaking for 10,000 years. The Space Marines didn't break, they didn't run. They simply adapted their tactics and prepared for the next assault. And in the distance, through the warp-tainted air, both Lilith and Diablo felt something else approaching, something that made even their ancient souls recoil in recognition of a peer-level threat. The Grey Knights were coming, and they specialized in killing things that shouldn't exist. The Inquisitorial Fortress Monastery, aboard the strike cruiser, Infinite Absolution, orbited Ophelia 7 like a vulture circling Carrion. Within its sanctified halls, Inquisitor Lord Kairos Vale of the Ordo Malleus studied the picked feeds from the surface with the intensity of a man who had spent 2 centuries hunting things that could end worlds. The hololithic display showed the plaza battle in grainy detail. 2 entities, clearly demon-adjacent, but demonstrating power signatures that his tech priests couldn't properly classify. The machine spirits themselves seemed confused, spitting out error codes and classification failures. Greater demon levels, certainly. But the energy patterns were wrong. Foreign. "They're not of the Four," Tech Priest Dominus Xerxes stated, his augmetic eyes whirring as they processed data streams. "Energy signatures do not match any known chaos manifestation. The Omnissiah's calculations suggest extra-dimensional origin." Inquisitor Vale stroked his beard, the bionic fingers of his left hand clicking softly. "Explain." "The Great Rift has torn the boundaries between dimensions," Xerxes continued, his binary cant mixing with Gothic as his excitement grew. "It is theoretically possible that entities from non-chaos realms could breach through during the upheaval. These two, they read as demonic in power scale, but their essence is fundamentally different from anything in our records. Different doesn't mean less dangerous." Sister Militant Cordelia of the Order of the Crimson Tear interjected. She stood at parade rest, her artificer armor bearing the scars of 100 battles against the demon. "We should deploy the Grey Knights immediately and banish both entities. The Emperor's enemies come in many forms. All must be purged." Vale held up his hand. "Perhaps. But consider, if they truly are not of chaos, they may be useful." The temperature in the strategium seemed to drop. Using demons was tech heresy of the highest order, the kind of radicalism that had seen many inquisitors declared excommunicate traitorous and hunted by their own ordo. But the Indomitus era demanded desperate measures. Half the galaxy was cut off by the Great Rift. Demon incursions were at historic highs, and the Imperium was bleeding from 1,000 wounds. "You propose weaponizing them," Interrogator Matthias said quietly. The young Inquisitor in training looked pale at the suggestion. "Lord Inquisitor, that path leads only to damnation." "That path leads to survival," Vale corrected sharply. "The female entity, preliminary analysis suggests she demonstrated protective behavior toward the Sister Superior. The male shows capacity for directed violence against our enemies. Neither has actively aligned with the Black Legion forces. I propose observation before termination." "Heresy," Cordelia stated flatly. "Pragmatism," Vale countered. "The Ultramarines are engaging them now. Captain Titus is competent, but not equipped for greater demon elimination. I've already dispatched Grey Knight Strike Force Sigma to the surface, but they won't arrive for another hour. In that time, we observe, we learn, and then we make an informed decision." He turned back to the hololith, watching as the two entities coordinated their defense against the Space Marines. "Look at them. Ancient enemies, clearly, the body language, the vitriol in their exchanges. Yet they're cooperating against a mutual threat that speaks to intelligence, to tactical thinking. Mindless demons don't form tactical alliances. Unless Tzeentch schemes behind them," Xerxes noted. "The changer of ways touch would be evident. These two are—" Vale paused, searching for the right word. "Independent variables, and I will not waste an opportunity to understand a potential advantage before throwing it away." Sister Militant Cordelia's jaw tightened. "And if they corrupt entire worlds while you observe, then I will sign the Exterminatus Order myself," Vale said coldly. "But I am Inquisitor Lord of the Ordo Malleus, servant of the Emperor and guardian against the demonic. If I say we observe, we observe." On the surface, Lilith was learning the hard truths of the 41st millennium. She had faced angels and demons, had warred against Tyrell and Imperius, had created an entire civilization from nothing, and watched it grow for millennia. But these Space Marines were different from any opponent she'd encountered. They didn't tire, they didn't fear, they didn't question. They simply executed their duty with the precision of organic killing machines. A bolter round grazed her shoulder, the blessed ammunition burning her essence even with a glancing blow. She retaliated by transmuting the ground beneath a Primaris Marine into a pool of blood, but the warrior simply engaged his jump pack and soared clear. "These toy soldiers are beginning to annoy me," Diablo growled, hurling a car-sized piece of rubble at a fire team. They scattered with practiced efficiency, maintaining firing lines throughout the movement. "They're not toys," Lilith replied, dodging a cracked missile that detonated against the cathedral wall behind her. "They're perfectly crafted weapons. Whoever shaped them understood how to create warriors without weakness." Captain Titus was coordinating the assault with cold efficiency, his tactical genius evident in every squad movement. He was herding them again, pushing them toward a section of the plaza where his heavy weapons teams could achieve crossfire. Lilith recognized the tactic. She'd used similar strategies when commanding the armies of Sanctuary against the forces of Heaven and Hell. "We need to disengage," she said. "Fighting these warriors gains us nothing. Running gains us less," Diablo snarled. "I am the Lord of Terror, Mother of Lies. I do not flee from mortal warriors, no matter how enhanced." "Then you'll die in a realm that isn't even your own, feeding your pride," Lilith snapped. "Look around you, fool. This entire world is a battlefield. Those black-armored traitors we sensed earlier, the warp storms, the corruption seeping through reality itself. We've landed in the middle of someone else's war, and we don't even understand the factions yet." Diablo paused, a Space Marine's combat knife embedded in his shoulder. He ripped it free and examined it. The blade was inscribed with litanies of hatred, blessed by whatever priests these warriors followed. Everything about this realm was weaponized faith. "You suggest we learn before we act?" "I suggest we survive long enough to figure out where in all the hells we are," Lilith corrected. "Our war can wait. Whatever's happening here is bigger than our grudges." The primeval's eyes burned with hatred. Hatred for Lilith, for these space marines, for this entire wretched dimension that dared treat him as just another demon to be purged. But beneath the fury, an ancient cunning stirred. The Mother of Sanctuary was right. Curse her. Knowledge was power, and they were operating blind. "Fine," he growled. "But when we do resume our conflict, when we resume, I'll tear your essence apart and scatter it across dimensions," Lilith promised sweetly. "As I've always intended. Now can you create an opening?" Diablo grinned, all fangs and malice. "Watch." He slammed both fists into the ground, and terror itself erupted upward. Not the directed assault he'd used before, but something more fundamental. The fear of darkness, of unknown things in the void, of being utterly alone in an uncaring universe. It was fear that transcended conditioning and training, that touched something primal in even the most hardened warrior. The Ultramarines wavered. Only for a second, their psycho-conditioning reasserting almost immediately. But a second was all that was needed. Lilith summoned blood from the very air, creating a crimson fog that obscured vision and senses alike. Within that fog, she and Diablo moved, not away from the battle, but toward the edges, melting into the ruins of the burning city. Captain Titus watched them go, tracking them until they vanished into the smoke and chaos. He raised his fist, signaling his squad to hold position rather than pursue into unknown terrain where the entities could ambush them. "Multiple contacts lost," one of his brothers reported. "Recommend pursuit with full tactical support." "Negative," Titus replied. "Regroup at Rally Point Tertius. This was reconnaissance, not a full assault. We've learned they can be hurt, can coordinate, and possess tactical intelligence. That's sufficient data for now." He looked up at the blood-red sky where orbital strikes still rained down on Black Legion positions. "Besides, we have a more immediate problem. The Grey Knights are inbound, and if these entities are still present when they arrive, the entire city will become a battlefield none of us will survive." Sister Superior Margaret, her armor scorched and her faith unshaken, approached the Space Marine captain. "They called themselves Lilith and Diablo, my lord. The female claimed to be Mother of Humanity." Titus's helmet turned toward her, lenses reflecting no emotion. "Blasphemy of the highest order. There is one Father of Humanity, the Emperor of mankind. All others are pretenders or demons." "That was my assessment as well, Lord." "Good." Titus's vox crackled as he opened the command channel. "All units, priority alert. 2 greater demon equivalent entities loose in the city. Classification unknown. Threat level extremis. Authorization for blessed ammunition and faith-sanctioned weapons granted across all ecclesiarchy forces. The Emperor protects." High above, in the infinite absolution, Inquisitor Vale smiled thinly. "And so the game begins," he murmured. "Let's see what choices you make. Ancient ones. Let's see if you're demons to be banished or tools to be wielded." The decision, he knew, would likely determine the fate of far more than just Ophelia's 7. The underhive of sanctified martyrdom was a vertical hell. Kilometers of rusted metal and fungus-slick stone where the dregs of humanity scraped out existence in perpetual darkness. The wealthy and faithful dwelt in the upper spires, their cathedrals touching the polluted sky. Down here, in the depths, millions lived and died without ever seeing the Emperor's light except through propaganda pics that flickered on corroded screens. It was here that Lilith and Diablo found temporary refuge, their presence causing panic among the underhivers who fled before them like rats before flame. The gangers who tried to claim territory down here took one look at the Blood Mother and the Lord of Terror and decided that perhaps a different level would be more profitable. They materialized in what had once been a processing plant, now abandoned for decades. Rust covered everything, and the smell of chemical decay mixed with human desperation. Water dripped from broken pipes, and in the distance, screams echoed. Whether from the Black Legion's raids above or the normal violence of underhive life, it was impossible to tell. Lilith examined her wound from the plasma pistol. It had sealed, but the pain lingered, a reminder that this realm could kill her. She was immortal in Sanctuary, a being of pure demonic essence. Here, she was powerful, but mortal, vulnerable. "We need information," she stated, her voice cutting through Diablo's seething rage. "This world, this Imperium they serve, the entities corrupting the upper levels. Everything." Diablo stood in the shadows, his massive form radiating menace even in stillness. "We need power to return to Sanctuary. We'll require an immense amount of energy, more than we currently possess." Agreed. But first, survival. Lilith moved to the entrance, her enhanced senses detecting movement. A group of humans huddled together, trying to hide from the violence above. She could smell their fear, their desperation. Refugees, probably from the upper hive, fleeing the war. Without thinking, she moved toward them. "What are you doing?" Diablo demanded. "Gathering intelligence and..." She paused. "They're frightened, helpless. So consume them," the prime evil suggested casually. "Or let me feed on their terror. We need strength." Lilith turned on him, eyes flashing. "I am not you, Diablo. I have never been you. These are humans, my children's descendants, however altered. I will not feast on them like some mindless beast. Your sentimentality will be your death in this realm," Diablo warned. "I've seen how these people fight. Mercy is alien to them." "Then I'll teach them," Lilith said firmly. She approached the refugees, a dozen people, young and old, clutching whatever possessions they'd managed to salvage. They pressed against the far wall, eyes wide with terror. A young woman, her face smeared with ash and prayer inks, held a last pistol with trembling hands. "Stay back, demon. The Emperor protects." "I'm not here to harm you," Lilith said softly, lowering herself to appear less threatening. It was a gesture she'd perfected over millennia, the concerned mother, the protector. "I want to help." "Lies," an older man spat. He wore the remnants of a priest's robes, scorched and torn. "You are of the warp, a servant of the ruinous powers. We will not fall to your corruption." Lilith felt confusion ripple through her. These people truly believed she was... what? This warp they kept mentioning? These ruinous powers? "I serve no one," she said carefully. "I am Lilith, daughter of Mephisto, mother of Sanctuary. I created the first humans, shaped them into something greater than angels or demons. I'm not your enemy." The priest laughed bitterly. "Blasphemy! There is one creator of humanity, the God Emperor of mankind. He sits upon the golden throne, his divine light guiding us through the darkness. You speak lies, demon, as all your kind do." Behind Lilith, Diablo snorted. "This is pointless. Kill them or leave them. Their faith is absolute. You won't break it with words." But Lilith studied the refugees more carefully. Their faith was absolute, yes, but beneath it, she sensed something else. Desperation, exhaustion, the hollow eyes of people who had seen too much death. They believed in their emperor with every fiber of their being, but it was belief born of necessity, of having nothing else to cling to in a universe that wanted them dead. "Your emperor," Lilith said slowly. "Where is he? I would speak with him." The priest's eyes widened in horror. "On Holy Terra, throne world of the Imperium. But no demon may approach his divine presence. The custodes would unmake you before you took a single step." Terra. The name resonated strangely, like a memory from another life. Sanctuary had been Earth once, before she and Inarius had hidden it. Could this be? No, that was impossible. The timeline was all wrong, the circumstances too divergent. This was a different Earth, a different humanity. one that had taken a very different path than her Nephalem. A child in the group, no more than 7 or 8 years old, suddenly broke free from their mother's grip and ran toward Lilith. The refugees screamed warnings, reaching for the child, but they were too slow. The girl stopped an arm's length from the blood mother, looked up with eyes that held no fear, only desperate hope. "Can you save us?" the child asked simply. "The bad angels killed Papa. Can you make them stop?" Lilith felt something crack inside her chest, not pain, but something deeper. This child, this innocent, saw her not as a demon, but as potential salvation. Just as the people of Sanctuary had once looked to her before she'd been betrayed, cast down, locked away. She reached out slowly and touched the girl's cheek with surprising gentleness. "I will try, little one, I will try." "Marisol!" The mother lunged forward, terror overriding her fear of the demon. She snatched her daughter back, clutching the child to her chest. "Don't touch her! Don't you dare corrupt her!" Lilith withdrew her hand, the moment broken. She stood, and the refugees cowered again, their momentary hope crushed by doctrine and fear. "Pathetic," Diablo commented from the shadows. "You waste your power on those who will never accept you." "Perhaps," Lilith agreed quietly. "But I am what I am. Mother, creator, protector of humanity, even when they don't want my protection." She turned to leave, but the priest called out, "Wait!" Lilith paused. The man's face was conflicted, faith warring with pragmatism. If you truly wish to help, then help us reach the upper levels. The Sisters of Battle maintain a refugee station at Cathedral Secundus. They will shelter us there. Can you at least do that?" Across the ruined district, in what had once been a grand manufactorum, Diablo pursued a very different strategy. He'd found a gang lord's hideout, 15 armed thugs who controlled 3 levels of the Underhive through violence and intimidation. They called themselves the Crimson Reapers, and they made their living raiding refugees and selling salvage to the Upper Hive. When they saw the primeval materialize in their central chamber, they opened fire with stubbers and autoguns. The bullets washed over Diablo like rain, irritating but meaningless. He studied them with the interest a scientist might give to particularly violent insects. "You feel it, don't you?" he rumbled, his voice making the metal walls vibrate. "The fear, the certainty that you're about to die. That's my domain, mortals. I am terror given form." The gang lord, a scarred brute with augmetic arms, screamed orders. "Keep firing. It's just another warp thing. Pour it on." But Diablo wasn't attacking. He was simply feeding. The fear in this hive was like wine after a drought. Billions of souls, all terrified of the war above, of starvation, of the darkness, of the daemons their priests warned about, of their own brutal Imperium. It was a feast unlike anything he'd experienced in Sanctuary, where fear had grown stale over the centuries. Here, it was fresh, potent, delicious. He inhaled deeply, and the fear intensified. The gangers began seeing things. Their dead victims, demons crawling from the walls, their own bodies rotting. They screamed and fired wildly, some turning their weapons on each other in panic. Diablo felt his strength returning, the wounds from the Space Marine engagement healing rapidly. This world was feeding him. In Sanctuary, he'd needed the Black Soul Stone, needed complex rituals and careful planning. Here, the ambient terror was so thick he could simply drink it from the air. One ganger dropped his weapon and ran. Diablo let him go. Spreading fear was as useful as causing it directly. Let them tell stories. Let the terror spread. The gang lord stood alone now, his crew dead or fled. But the man's terror had transformed into something else. Rage. The kind of rage that came from staring into the abyss and deciding to spit in its face. "I don't care what you are," he snarled, drawing a chain axe that roared to life. "The Emperor protects his faithful, and even if he doesn't, I die standing," he charged. Diablo caught the chain axe in one massive hand, the whirring teeth screeching against his palm but failing to penetrate. He studied the gang lord with something approaching respect. "You're not faithless," Diablo observed. "Even here, in this pit of despair, you believe your emperor watches. He's watching right now." The gang lord spat blood. "And when I die, I'll die knowing I fought his enemies." Diablo crushed the chain axe to scrap, but he didn't kill the man. Instead, he leaned close, his burning eyes boring into the gang lord's soul. "Your emperor?" Diablo said softly. "Tell me about him. Tell me about this Imperium. Tell me everything, and if you do, I'll let you live to fight his enemies another day." The gang lord's eyes widened. A demon offering mercy? Impossible. It had to be a trick, a corruption, but behind that demonic visage, the gang lord saw something that shocked him more than the offer itself. Genuine curiosity. This creature, this thing from the warp, actually wanted to understand. "Why?" he managed to gasp. "Why would you care about the Imperium?" Diablo's smile was terrible to behold. "Because, mortal, I've walked this realm for mere hours, and already I can see this galaxy is dying. Your Imperium is rotting from within while enemies tear at it from without. And I find myself wondering..." He released the gang lord, letting the man collapse to the floor. "I wonder if there's profit in watching it burn, or if there's more to be gained by ensuring it survives just a little longer. So talk. Tell me about this eternal war. Tell me why you fight for a corpse on a throne, and tell me who, exactly, is winning." The gang lord, against all his training and indoctrination, found himself talking, and in the shadows, ancient intelligences that had noticed these two foreign entities began to scheme, wondering how two pieces that didn't belong might be used in the great game that had consumed the galaxy for 10,000 years. The Grey Knights arrived like a silver storm. Their Thunderhawk gunship screamed through the blood-red sky, its hull inscribed with wards and litanies that made even the warp itself recoil. Where the Ultramarines had been warrior monks of extraordinary skill, the Grey Knights were something else entirely. The chamber militant of the Ordo Malleus, the psychic warriors specifically designed to fight demons. Every single one was a psyker. Every single one was incorruptible, their souls forged in the Emperor's own light, and every single one could sense Lilith and Diablo's presence like a cancer in reality. Brother Captain Arvan Stern descended the gunship's ramp, his nemesis force sword already thrumming with psychic energy. His ornate Aegis armor was covered in purity seals and demon-killing wards, each one inscribed by the chapter's prognosticars and blessed by Grandmaster Voldus himself. Behind him, 5 of his brothers, each a veteran of 100 Daemon purges, spread out in perfect formation. "There," Stern said, his voice calm despite the situation. His psychic senses painted the world in colors normal humans couldn't perceive. The warp taint of the Black Legion showed a sick green corruption spreading through the upper hive. Standard demon activity glowed various shades of chaos: pink for Slanesh, red for Khorne, sickly yellow-green for Nurgle, ever-shifting blue for Tzeentch. But in the underhive, 2 sources of power burned that matched none of those colors. "Unknown classification," Brother Castian reported, his psychic hood crackling with barely restrained energy. "They read as greater demon level, but the signature is foreign, Brother Captain, like nothing in our codices." "New demons can be spawned," Stern replied. "Or these could be avatars of the Chaos Gods experimenting with new forms. The reason doesn't matter. They exist, they corrupt reality. They will be banished." Justicar Alaric, veteran of the Terran Crusade, mag-locked his storm bolter and drew his force, halberd. "Rules of engagement, Brother Captain. The rite of exorcism first," Stern commanded. "If they are demons, true names will give us power over them. If the rite fails, we engage with terminal force. The Emperor's light shall be our shield, and his will shall be our sword. By his will, the strike force intoned in unison. They moved through the ruins with supernatural coordination, each Grey Knight maintaining psychic links with his brothers that allowed them to fight as one organism. Where they walked, reality seemed to strengthen. The warp retreated before their faith made manifest, and lesser demons that had been haunting the ruins fled or dissipated entirely. Lilith sensed them coming long before they arrived. She was escorting the refugees through the underhive tunnels, using her power to clear paths through the debris and ensuring gangers steered clear. The child, Marisol, walked beside her mother, occasionally glancing back at the Blood Mother with something that might have been hope. Then the psychic pressure hit her like a hammer. Silver light. Pure. Absolute. Anathema. No, she whispered, recognizing the signature. It was similar to the light of the high heavens, to Tyrael's inflexible justice and Imperius's absolute wrath. These warriors weren't just soldiers. They were instruments of divine will. "Everyone run," she commanded the refugees. "Now!" The priest started to argue, then felt it too. Even non-psychers could sense the Grey Knight's approach, like feeling a predator's eyes on your back. The refugees scattered, fleeing deeper into the hive. Lilith turned to face the approaching storm. She could run, hide, but these hunters would never stop. Their type never did. Better to meet them head-on and establish. The Grey Knights crashed through the wall, not metaphorically. Brother Castian simply raised his hand, and the rockcrete exploded outward, clearing a path. The 6 warriors stepped through the breach like avenging angels, their armor gleaming despite the darkness, their weapons burning with psychic fire. Brother Captain Stern leveled his force sword at Lilith. "In the name of the God Emperor of mankind, immortal master of the Imperium, I, Arven Stern of the Grey Knights, command you, speak your true name, demon, so that you may be bound and banished to the warp from whence you crawled." The words carried weight, not just sound, but authority that resonated through multiple dimensions. This was the rite of exorcism, a weapon forged over 10,000 years of demon hunting. True names had power in the warp. If Lilith spoke hers, these warriors could use it to bind her, control her, banish her. "I am Lilith," she replied carefully. "Daughter of Mephisto, mother of Sanctuary, creator of..." "Lies!" Stern's psychic shout was accompanied by a wave of holy fire that washed over Lilith. It burned, but not like the plasma had. This was different. This was faith weaponized, will made manifest. It hurt her essence itself. "I speak truth," Lilith snarled, retaliating with blood magic. Crimson chains erupted from the ground, attempting to bind the Grey Knights, but their psychic shields held, the chains shattering against silver light. "Your truth is corruption," Justicar Alaric stated, his storm bolter roaring. The blessed ammunition exploded against Lilith's hastily erected barriers. "You are warp spawn, and warp spawn has no place in the Emperor's galaxy." Lilith realized these warriors couldn't be reasoned with. Their minds were fortresses of absolute certainty, psycho-conditioned beyond even the Ultramarines. They saw demon, and demons must be purged. Nothing else mattered. She prepared to flee. Fighting 6 psychic warriors of this caliber was suicide, when reality shattered behind the Grey Knights and Diablo crashed into their formation like a meteor. The Lord of Terror's arrival was catastrophic. He'd been feeding on the Hive's fear for the past hour, growing stronger with each terrified soul. Now he was close to his full power, and he used it all at once. Terror made flesh. Nightmare given form. The psychic assault hit the Grey Knights like a tidal wave, showing them their worst fears, the Emperor dying on the Golden Throne, the Imperium falling to chaos, humanity extinct, their sacrifices meaningless, Titans treading on Terra's bones. The Grey Knights staggered. Only for a moment, their mental conditioning reasserted almost immediately. But a moment was all Diablo needed. His claws tore through Aegis armor, the first time anyone had wounded a Grey Knight in this engagement. Brother Castian went flying, his psychic hood sparking as it overloaded, trying to compensate for the assault. Another knight swung his force halberd, and Diablo caught it. The psychically charged blade should have banished him instantly, but he wasn't a demon of chaos. The weapon hurt, but it didn't unmake him. "Impossible!" Brother Captain Stern roared, his tactical analysis struggling with entities that broke every rule he'd been taught. These things weren't demons of the Four. They didn't follow demon combat patterns. They didn't react to demon-slaying weapons the way they should. "What are you?" he demanded, his force sword clashing against Diablo's hellfire. "I am your doom," Diablo snarled, and for the first time in his service, Arvan Stern felt something he'd been conditioned to never feel: doubt. Lilith moved while the Grey Knights were focused on Diablo. She had no love for the prime evil, but right now he was the only thing standing between her and banishment to this realm's warp. And she'd sensed what lurked there, things that made even her ancient soul recoil. She struck from behind, blood magic lancing toward Brother Castian while he was still recovering. Her attack should have ended him, but Justicar Alaric interposed himself, his storm shield absorbing the blow. The shield cracked but held. Coordinated tactics, Alaric noted, transmitting tactical data to his brothers. Two separate entities working together. Classification: Demon Prince Pair. Possible bound service to new Chaos entity or... Diablo's claws removed his helmet, and only the knight's ceramite skin saved him from decapitation. The battle devolved into controlled chaos. The Grey Knights were the Imperium's finest demon hunters, but they were built for fighting chaos entities with predictable patterns. Lilith and Diablo fought like champions from another age, combining power with skill in ways that demon princes typically didn't. Demon princes were powerful, but often crude, their minds degraded by corruption. These two were lucid, tactical, and working together despite clearly hating each other. Brother Captain Stern made a decision. Tactical withdrawal, regroup at Extraction Point Delta, mark targets for orbital bombardment. Brother Captain, we've never retreated from... We're not retreating, Stern interrupted. We're adapting, whatever these entities are. We need more information before committing to full engagement. Fall back in echelon formation, covering fire. The Grey Knights withdrew with the same supernatural coordination they'd arrived with, their storm bolters and cyclones laying down a devastating barrage that forced Lilith and Diablo to take cover. Within seconds, they'd extracted back through the breach, collapsing the tunnel behind them with controlled demolition charges. Silence fell over the ruined underhive. Lilith and Diablo stood amid the rubble, both wounded but alive. The Blood Mother's arm was charred from psychic fire. The Lord of Terror had a massive gash across his chest from a force sword. "They'll be back," Lilith stated. "Obviously," Diablo growled. "And next time they'll bring more. These aren't the mindless zealots we fought before. These are elite hunters. We need shelter, information, and..." Lilith paused. "We need to understand this realm's power structures. These chaos gods they keep mentioning, the warp, this emperor they worship. We're operating blind, and it's going to get us killed." For once, Diablo didn't argue. His tactical mind, honed through millennia of warfare, had reached the same conclusion. The gang lord I questioned spoke of factions, loyalists and traitors, humans and xenos, this Imperium and its enemies. We need allies. "We need to survive," Lilith corrected. "Allies are a luxury we haven't earned yet." High above, in orbit, Inquisitor Lord Vale reviewed the Grey Knights' combat recordings with satisfaction. "Did you see?" he asked his assembled staff. "They fought the Grey Knights to a standstill. Two entities, unknown classification, demonstrated power equivalent to demon princes but without chaos corruption. They coordinate, they adapt, they retreat when outmatched. They're still abominations," Sister Militant Cordelia insisted. Undoubtedly, Vale agreed, but abominations can be useful. The Inquisition has used worse in the Emperor's service. He turned to his interrogator. Matthias, you'll lead the ground team. Make contact. Offer them a choice. What choice, Lord? Vale's smile was cold. Serve the Imperium's interests or face exterminatus? Everyone has a choice in the end. Let's see if they're pragmatic enough to make the right one. In the underhive darkness, Lilith and Diablo felt the weight of watching eyes, of schemes set in motion, of a galaxy that had noticed 2 new pieces on its eternal chessboard, and somewhere in the warp, where the 4 Chaos Gods held court over their domains, 4 pairs of malevolent eyes turned toward Ophelia 7 with interest. New souls, powerful souls, unclaimed souls. The great game had new players, whether they wanted to play or not. The blood called to Khorne. In the warp, within the brass citadel that sat at the center of the blood god's domain, Khorne, the Axe-Father, stirred. He had felt the great rift tear reality, had reveled in the wars it spawned, had drunk deep of the galaxy's endless slaughter. But now something new had entered his awareness. Blood magic that wasn't his. Violence that bore no oath to his throne, power that resonated with his domain yet served no master. Lilith. The blood god's interest was the worst thing that could happen to anyone in the galaxy. To be noticed by Khorne meant being claimed, corrupted, or destroyed. There was no negotiation with the god of slaughter, no middle ground between service and death. The first bloodthirster manifested 3 hours after the Grey Knights withdrew. Lilith was attempting to rest. Her essence needed time to recover from the psychic burns when reality tore open above the underhive refuge she'd claimed. The demon prince that emerged was massive. 12 feet of corded muscle and brass armor, wings spread wide, a grates that wept molten metal clutched in clawed hands. Its skull face was locked in an eternal snarl, and the rage radiating from it made the air itself scorch. Mother of blood, the bloodthirster roared, its voice shaking the foundations. Khorne the mighty has seen your workings. The Lord of Skulls demands your fealty. Lilith rose, exhaustion forgotten, power gathering around her. She recognized this entity's nature instantly, a demon, but not like the lesser evils, or even the prime evils of her realm. This was something purer, more focused. Violence distilled into conscious form. I serve no one, she replied coldly. Not heaven, not hell, and certainly not whatever blood-soaked entity sent you. The bloodthirster laughed, a sound like continents colliding. You misunderstand, Blood Witch. This is not request. Khorne does not ask. He claims. Your magic flows from blood. Your power stems from slaughter. You are his whether you acknowledge it or not. 3 more bloodthirsters manifested around the first, forming a semicircle. Each was a different aspect of Khorne's wrath. One bore a whip of skulls, another wielded twin axes, the third carried a blade that screamed with the voices of the murdered. Join the blood god's legions, the first demon continued, its tone slightly less thunderous but no less menacing. Accept the mark of Khorne, lead armies in his name. In exchange, power beyond your comprehension, the galaxy itself as your battlefield, billions of skulls to claim for the throne, blood flowing in rivers across stars. Lilith felt the offer like a physical weight. These entities were offering her exactly what she'd once wanted, the power to reshape civilization according to her vision, armies to command, dominion over worlds. All she had to do was kneel to this Khorne and accept that her power belonged to him. And if I refuse, she asked, though she already knew the answer, then you are enemy. All 4 bloodthirsters roared in unison. Blood will be spilled this day, yours or ours. Khorne cares not from whence the blood flows, only that it flows. They attacked. The battle that followed was apocalyptic. 4 greater demons of Khorne against the Mother of Sanctuary, in an underhive where thousands of refugees huddled in terror, their fear feeding the violence. Bloodthirsters were living weapons, demons who existed solely to kill, to maim, to slaughter. They were faster than their bulk suggested, stronger than their muscles implied, and utterly without mercy or hesitation. Lilith met them with everything she had. Blood erupted from her palms, forming weapons, spears, swords, whips, all crystallized from the essence of violence itself. She danced between the bloodthirsters' attacks, her movements honed by millennia of combat against both angels and demons. When the first demon's axe came down, she didn't block. She redirected, using the creature's momentum against it, sending it crashing into its brother. "I created the Nephalem," she snarled, her voice carrying the weight of divine authority. "I shaped humanity from nothing. I will not be claimed by some upstart god who mistakes violence for power." She transmuted the ground beneath the skull-whipped demon into liquid blood, then flash froze it, trapping the creature's legs. Before it could break free, she drove a blood spear through its chest. The demon howled, not in pain, but in rage, and dissipated back into the warp. 1 down, 3 to go. But Lilith was tiring. Every spell she cast in this realm was harder than in Sanctuary, the fundamental laws of reality fighting her. And these bloodthirsters were relentless, reforming from wounds that should have been fatal, their brass armor deflecting attacks that should have penetrated. The twin-axe demon caught her with a backhanded blow that sent her crashing through a wall. She felt ribs crack. Actually crack, something that shouldn't have been possible for a being of her nature. This realm was making her vulnerable in ways she'd never experienced. "Yield!" the first bloodthirster commanded, standing over her. "Accept Khorne's mark. Your defiance is admirable but futile. The blood god respects strength. Show yours by joining his legends." Lilith looked up at the demon, at the certainty in its skull face, at the absolute conviction that there was no path except service or death. It reminded her of Imperius, of the Angiris Council's inflexibility, of everyone who had ever told her that she must serve someone else's vision of order. "No," she whispered. Then, louder, "No!" She detonated her own blood. The psychic explosion caught all 3 remaining bloodthirsters, a nova of crimson energy that would have vaporized a city block. The demons staggered, their forms destabilizing, but they didn't dissipate. Khorne's favor was too strong, his will sustaining them even through attacks that should have banished them. But it bought Lilith seconds to escape. She fled, not out of cowardice, but tactics. These demons were infinite. Kill them here, they'd reform in the warp and return. She needed to understand what she was facing, needed to learn the rules of this nightmare galaxy before she could effectively fight its horrors. Behind her, the bloodthirsters' rage shook the underhive, their bellows of fury echoing across the city. "The blood god will not forget this slight. You will kneel, blood mother, if not today, then tomorrow. If not to Khorne, then to death." Across the city, in an abandoned Mechanicus shrine, Diablo felt Lilith's distress through the dimensional bond they shared, an artifact of their eternal conflict, the way predator and prey became linked through millennia of pursuit. He smiled, all fangs and malice. Let her suffer. Let her learn that this galaxy devoured the proud and the defiant. When she was broken, when she finally accepted that survival meant compromise, then he would. His thoughts froze as he sensed another presence manifesting. Not violent like the blood demons. This was subtler, infinitely more dangerous. Reality twisted, and Tzeentch's herald appeared, a lord of change, its form constantly shifting, bird-like and horrible and beautiful all at once. 9 eyes opened across its body, each containing entire universes of forbidden knowledge. When it spoke, its voice was 1,000 whispers, all saying different things that somehow combined into meaning. "Lord of Terror," the demon crooned. "The architect of fate has watched your arrival with great interest. You scheme, you plot, you manipulate fear itself. These are skills the Changer of Ways appreciates. Diablo studied the entity with ancient cunning awakening. This wasn't a recruitment like Khorne's blood daemons. This was something more insidious. "What does your master want?" he asked carefully. The Lord of Change's smile was a mockery of human expression. "Want? The great schemer wants nothing. He already knows all outcomes, all possibilities. But he offers you opportunity." "Explain." The Black Legion warband corrupting this world is led by a sorcerer lord named Malfurious. He seeks an artifact buried beneath the hive, an ancient text that contains rituals to summon something significant. Tzeentch finds this amusing, but also inconvenient. Perhaps you would find it profitable to ensure Malfurious fails. Diablo's eyes narrowed. "Why would I care about your god's games?" "Because Malfurious knows how to open portals between dimensions," the demon replied, "including, perhaps, a path back to your precious sanctuary, but only if you serve Tzeentch's interests, only if you prove yourself useful." The offer hung in the air like poison, a chance to return home. All he had to do was become this Tzeentch's pawn, play in schemes he didn't understand, in a game where the rules changed by the moment. Diablo had played such games before. In the high heavens, in the burning hells, he'd been the prime evil, the lord of a third of hell itself. He knew manipulation, knew corruption, knew how to turn an apparent master's schemes against them. "Tell me about this sorcerer," Diablo said slowly. "Tell me everything." The Lord of Change's many eyes gleamed with satisfaction. The hook was set, whether the fish realized it or not. High in the ruins, Lilith collapsed against a wall, her chest heaving, blood, her own blood, dripping from a dozen wounds. The bloodthirsters had withdrawn, but their message was clear: refuse Khorne and face endless war. She looked at her hands, at the blood magic that had sustained her for millennia, and felt the weight of realization. In this galaxy, power came from somewhere. The Imperium drew power from their emperor. The demons drew power from their gods. Even the Space Marines drew power from their gene fathers. She was alone, powerful but alone. And in a galaxy that ran on faith and devotion, independence was the ultimate weakness. "I will not kneel," she whispered to the darkness. "Not to Khorne, not to any of them. I am Lilith. I am Mother, Creator, the First. I will find a way to survive this nightmare on my own terms." But even as she spoke the words, she wondered if defiance was strength or simply pride wearing a noble mask. In the warp, Khorne's laughter shook the brass citadel. The Blood Witch had refused. Good. The hunt was always more satisfying than the surrender. She would break eventually. They all did. The Black Legion's stronghold was a desecrated cathedral in the upper hive. Its holy icons melted and reformed into chaos sigils, its prayer halls converted to summoning chambers where reality bled and screamed. Sorcerer Lord Malfurious stood in the central nave, his ornate Terminator armor inscribed with glyphs that hurt to perceive, reading from a tome bound in human skin and inked in the blood of psychers. "The ritual approaches completion," he intoned, his voice distorted by 10,000 years of warp corruption. "Soon, the primordial truth will be mine, and with it, the knowledge to summon the Architect's greatest servant. All shall be revealed. All shall change." His apprentices, corrupted sorcerers who had once served the Thousand Suns before joining Abaddon's Black Legion, chanted in response, their voices creating harmonics that bent space-time. The warp rift above the cathedral pulsed, growing wider, hungrier. None of them sensed Diablo's approach until he was already inside. The Lord of Terror manifested from the shadows, his presence causing the corrupted candles to gutter and die. The sorcerers spun, bolters and force staves raised, but Malfurious held up one hand. "Wait," the Chaos Lord commanded, his many eyes, 3 on his helmet, 7 more floating around his head, focused on Diablo with interest. This is not a demon of the 4. This is something else. I am Diablo, the primeval announced, Lord of Terror, Master of Fear, and I have a proposition for you, sorcerer. Malfurious laughed, the sound echoing with warp resonance. A demon proposing deals? How delightfully unorthodox. I assume Tzeentch sent you. Tzeentch's herald provided information, Diablo admitted carefully. But I serve no one. I come offering an exchange, my power, in return for knowledge. Knowledge of what? Dimensional travel. The herald said you possess rituals to open portals between realities. The sorcerer's many eyes narrowed in understanding. Ah, you wish to return to wherever you came from. Yes, I can see it now. You're not native to our reality. You're foreign contamination, like a virus in the galaxy's bloodstream. He turned back to his tome. I could help you, but why would I? What do you offer that I cannot simply take once you're weakened and desperate? Diablo had anticipated this. He'd spent millennia playing politics in the burning hells, where betrayal was currency and alliances lasted only until convenience faded. Because I can give you something no demon of chaos can... Surprise. Explain. Your enemies know how chaos fights. They've been fighting you for 10,000 years, but I'm new, unknown. When I attack, they won't have protocols, won't have tactics, won't have answers. I can be the edge you need to complete your ritual. Malfurious considered this. The demon made a compelling argument. The Imperium's forces on Ophelius Abeth had adapted to chaos tactics. The Grey Knights were already hunting the cathedral, and his ritual was vulnerable during the final phases. Very well, the sorcerer decided. Help me complete the summoning. In exchange, I will share the dimensional bridge ritual. But know this, terror spawn, if you betray me, there are fates worse than death. Tzeentch's dungeons contain horrors that would make even you scream. Understood, Diablo replied. But internally, he smiled. Fools. All of them. He'd made deals with Belial and Asmodan, with Mephisto himself. He knew how to serve without serving, how to betray without seeming to betray. The trap Tzeentch had set for him was obvious. Work with Malfurious, become complicit in chaos schemes, gradually corrupt. But Diablo had no intention of playing the game by their rules. He would use these sorcerers, learn what he needed, and then dispose of them. After all, he was the Lord of Terror. Manipulation was his native language. The Grey Knights are moving, one of the apprentice sorcerers reported, his scrying bowl showing silver-armored warriors approaching through the hive. Brother Captain Stern leads 5 squads. ETA, 20 minutes. Excellent timing, Malfurious said. Terror Lord, demonstrate your value. Delay them. Diablo inclined his head and dissolved into shadows. Brother Captain Stern of the Grey Knights advanced through the hive with mechanical precision. His battle brothers moved in perfect formation, their psychic bonds allowing them to fight as one consciousness distributed across multiple bodies. They'd spent 6 hours preparing for this assault, sanctifying ammunition, performing rites of warding, meditating on the enumerations of the Imperial Tarot. The corruption is thickest ahead, Brother Castian reported, his psychic senses painting the world in colors of taint. Multiple greater demon signatures. The Black Legion has been busy. We've purged worse, Stern replied. The Emperor protects. We are his angels of... Terror crashed into them like a physical force. Not the base fear of death or pain. The Grey Knights were conditioned beyond such mortal concerns. This was something deeper. The fear that the Emperor had already died and they were fighting for nothing. The fear that chaos had already won and they were the last defenders of a corpse. The fear that their sacrifices were meaningless, that 10,000 years of war had accomplished nothing, that humanity was circling the drain while they stood watch over the inevitable. Existential dread, cosmic horror, the certainty that everything they believed was a lie. 3 Grey Knights stumbled. Only 3, only for a moment, but in that moment, Diablo struck. He materialized from the darkness, claws slashing through Aegis armor. Justicar Alaric, veteran of 1,000 battles, barely got his storm shield up in time. The impact sent him flying through a wall. "Unknown hostile!" Brother Castian shouted, his cycnon roaring. The blessed ammunition that could unmake demons struck Diablo's center mass. It hurt. These weapons were anathema to demonic essence, and while Diablo wasn't truly a demon, he was close enough for the munitions to burn. He roared in pain and rage, then channeled that pain into terror, projecting it back at his attackers. "You'll all die here," he snarled, his voice layered with psychic compulsion. "Not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but eventually, all of you, consumed by chaos, forgotten by the Imperium you serve, your sacrifice is wasted. You know it's true. You feel it in your soul." Brother Captain Stern's hand tightened on his force sword. The terror was worming through his mental defenses, finding cracks in his psycho-conditioning. He'd been fighting for 200 years. How many brothers had he lost? How many worlds had fallen despite his best efforts? Was he making any difference, or just delaying the inevitable? No. He slammed his mental defenses closed like a fortress gate. "I am a Grey Knight," he stated, his voice absolute. "I am the hammer. I am the blade. I am the bulwark against the terror. I am the Emperor's will made manifest. You have no power here." The words weren't just speech, they were psychic counterattack, faith weaponized. Stern's force sword ignited with silver fire, and he lunged at Diablo with speed that belied his massive armor. Diablo barely avoided decapitation. These warriors were adapting, faster than anyone he'd fought in Sanctuary. He needed a different approach. He called up hellfire and lightning, the fundamental powers of the prime evil, and directed them at the tunnel ceiling. The ancient rock-crete, already weakened by centuries of war, collapsed, tons of debris crashing down between him and the Grey Knights. It bought him seconds, maybe minutes if he was lucky. He fled deeper into the cathedral, leading them away from Malthurius's ritual chamber. The sorcerer needed time, and Diablo would provide it. Not out of loyalty, but because he needed that ritual knowledge. His survival depended on appearing useful until he could seize what he needed. Behind the rubble, the Grey Knights were already clearing a path, their servo motors whining as they lifted multi-ton blocks of stone. Unusual tactics for a demon, Justicar Alaric noted, his armor scorched but functional. "It's retreating, using terrain, thinking." "Then we adapt as well," Stern commanded. "Brother Castian, you and Squad Corvus pursue. The rest of us move to the primary target, the Black Legion ritual chamber. Whatever that entity is, it's buying time for the sorcerers. We will not give them that time." The Grey Knights split their forces with practiced efficiency. 3 brothers pursuing Diablo, while Stern led the main force toward the cathedral's heart. Diablo, running through corridors that stank of corruption and burned flesh, realized he'd been outmaneuvered. These warriors had correctly identified his purpose and adapted their strategy. They were treating him as intelligent opposition, not mindless demon. Grudging respect flickered through his hatred. These space marines, these Grey Knights, they were worthy opponents. More dangerous than most angels he'd fought, more tactically sound than many demon lords, which meant they needed to die before they ruined everything. He turned, ready to face his 3 pursuers, when psychic pressure washed over the entire hive. The ritual had reached its critical phase. Malthurius was summoning something big, and from the opposite side of the city, Diablo felt Lilith's power flare. She was under attack again, this time by what felt like more of those Khorne demons. The galaxy was forcing them both toward choices neither wanted to make. Serve chaos, serve the Imperium, or die trying to maintain independence in a realm that didn't permit neutral ground. Diablo looked at the Grey Knights approaching through the smoke, at the cathedral where chaos rituals warped reality, at the distant flare of Lilith's desperate battle. And he smiled, because he was the Lord of Terror, and terror thrived in chaos. Let them all come. Let them all think they were manipulating him. In the end, he would turn their schemes against them, just as he always had. The question was whether he'd survive long enough to do so. The canoness preceptor of the Order of the Sacred Rose knelt before the shrine of St. Catherine, her armor still scorched from the week's fighting, her bolter resting across her lap. Canoness Jessamine had served the Emperor for 60 years, had burned heretics on a dozen worlds, had stood in the face of greater demons and not faltered. Her faith was adamantine, unbreakable. But today, that faith faced a test unlike any before. "Rise, Canoness," commanded Inquisitor Lord Kairos Vale, standing in the doorway of the shrine. Behind him, his retinue, Tech Priest Xerxes, Sister Militant Cordelia, and Interrogator Matthias, waited in the shadows. Jessamine stood, her movements crisp despite fatigue. "Lord Inquisitor, I assume this concerns the abominations loose in my city?" "Indeed. I need the Sisters of Battle to make contact with one of them." The temperature in the shrine seemed to drop. Sister Militant Cordelia tensed, and even Tech Priest Xerxes' augmetic eyes widened fractionally. "Contact," Jessamine repeated flatly. "Not purge, not banish. Contact. The entity that calls itself Lilith has demonstrated protective behavior toward human civilians," Vale explained. "She evacuated refugees from a collapse zone, defended them against gangers, and explicitly refused to harm the child who approached her. This suggests she may be reasoned with." "She claims to be Mother of Humanity," Jessamine replied, her voice sharp with barely controlled fury. "There is one Father of Humanity, the God Emperor of mankind, who sits upon the golden throne. This demon's blasphemy is beyond tolerance." "I agree it's blasphemous," Vale said carefully. "But consider, what if she genuinely believes her claim? What if she's from a reality where she did create humanity and now finds herself in ours, confused and defensive? Then she is still a demon, still an affront to the Emperor, and still must be purged." Vale had expected this response. The Adepta Sororitas were the most faithful of all Imperial forces, their acts of faith literal manifestations of the Emperor's power. They were incorruptible precisely because they would rather die than compromise their beliefs, which made what he had to ask incredibly dangerous. "Canoness, I'm invoking inquisitorial authority. You will take a squad to make contact with the entity Lilith. You will assess whether she can be turned to the Imperium's service. If yes, you will offer her sanctuary. If no, you will execute her with extreme prejudice." Jessamine's hand went to her bolt pistol. For a moment, just a moment, the tension suggested she might shoot the Inquisitor where he stood. But centuries of conditioning and discipline held. "This is heresy, Lord Inquisitor." "This is necessity," Vale corrected. "Half the galaxy is cut off by the Great Rift. Chaos is ascendant. We are losing this war, Canoness. If there is even a chance this entity can be weaponized against the true enemy, I must explore it. And if she corrupts my sisters, then I will personally sign the order to have them burned as witches," Vale replied without hesitation. "But your faith is strong, Canoness. If anyone can confront this entity without falling, it's the Sisters of Battle." Jessamine wanted to refuse. Every fiber of her being screamed that this was wrong, that dealing with demons, even potentially useful ones, was the path to damnation. But Vale was right about one thing. They were losing. Ophelia VII was one world among thousands under siege. The Imperium was bleeding from 10,000 wounds. "I will do as ordered," she said finally. "But know this, Inquisitor, if I perceive even the slightest taint of corruption, I will burn her to ash and face whatever consequences come. I would expect nothing less. 6 hours later, Canoness Jessamine led her Celestian squad through the Underhive, following the psychic traces that tech priest Xerxes had provided. 10 of the finest warriors the Order of the Sacred Rose could field, each a veteran of countless battles, each willing to die for the Emperor without hesitation. They found Lilith in what had once been a water reclamation plant, now a refugee camp housing several hundred civilians who had fled the fighting above. The Blood Mother stood in the center, using her power to purify the toxic water, not out of need, but because the refugees needed clean water to survive. She sensed the sisters approach and turned, exhaustion evident in her stance. The bloodthirster attacks had weakened her, and she'd been using her power constantly to help the refugees. It was draining her in ways she didn't fully understand. "More warriors of your Emperor," she said tiredly. "Come to try killing me again." "We've come to talk," Jessamine replied, though her bolt pistol remained ready. "Though if you give me reason, I will gladly purge you where you stand." Lilith studied the battle sisters with interest. These warriors were different from the Space Marines, smaller, unaugmented, but radiating such absolute faith that it almost hurt to perceive. They believed in their Emperor with every molecule of their being. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "Talk then," Lilith said, "though I suspect you've already decided I'm an abomination beyond redemption." "You claim to be Mother of Humanity," Jessamine stated. "Explain." So Lilith did. She spoke of sanctuary, of how she and Inarius had hidden a world from heaven and hell, how they'd created the Nephalem by combining angel and demon essence with human potential, how she'd shaped civilization, nurtured it, protected it, until she'd been betrayed and imprisoned for millennia. The sisters listened in silence, their faces unreadable behind helmets. When Lilith finished, Jessamine lowered her bolt pistol, not holstering it, but lowering it, a small sign of respect. "That is a compelling story," the Canoness said quietly. "And if it's true, I understand why you believe what you do. But you are not in Sanctuary anymore. You are in the Emperor's galaxy, where humanity already has a father, the God Emperor of mankind. He created us, guided us, sacrificed himself for us. He sits upon the golden throne, burning through 10,000 psychers daily to maintain the Astronomicon that guides humanity through the darkness." 10,000 psychers? Lilith repeated, horrified. "Daily? That's monstrous." "That is necessity," Jessamine corrected sharply. "Without the Astronomicon, warp travel becomes impossible. Without warp travel, the Imperium fragments. Without the Imperium, humanity dies. The Emperor's sacrifice is the only thing keeping our species alive." "At the cost of 10,000 souls every day?" "Yes, because the alternative is extinction." Lilith felt something crack inside her. This galaxy's cruelty wasn't random, it was systematic, necessary. The Imperium wasn't evil because it enjoyed suffering. It was evil because survival demanded it. Every brutal choice, every mass execution, every world burned to ash, all of it was the price of not dying. "This is insane," she whispered. "This entire galaxy is insane." "Welcome to the 41st millennium," Sister Seraphine said from behind Jessamine, her voice dry. "Where sanity is weakness and hope is heresy." Jessamine shot her subordinate a warning look, but didn't contradict her. Because it was true. The galaxy was insane, and those who couldn't accept that went mad or died. "The Inquisitor believes you might be useful," Jessamine continued. "He thinks your power could be weaponized against chaos. Is he right? Can you be trusted to serve the Imperium's interests?" Lilith looked at the Canoness, at the absolute certainty in her stance, and realized the choice being offered. Serve the Imperium, become a sanctioned asset, a tool to be used and discarded, or refuse and be hunted by every force in this nightmare galaxy. Neither option was acceptable. "I will not serve," Lilith said firmly. "Not your Imperium, not Chaos, not anyone. I've spent millennia refusing to be anyone's pawn. I won't start now." "Then you're a fool," Jessamine replied, raising her bolt pistol again. "Because in this galaxy, there are no independent powers. You're either with the Imperium or you're the enemy. Choose." "I choose neither," Lilith snarled, her power gathering. "I choose to survive, to find a way home, and to do it without compromising who I am." "Then you choose death." The Sisters of Battle opened fire. Blessed bolts screamed across the reclamation plant, each round inscribed with prayers and litanies. Lilith erected barriers of crystallized blood, but the sisters were tactical geniuses, flanking and herding her just as the Space Marines had. They weren't as physically powerful as the Astartes, but they were just as well trained and far more numerous. Sister Seraphine fired her heavy flamer, Holy Prometheum, washing over Lilith's position. The Blood Mother screamed, not in pain, but in rage, and transmuted the flames into blood rain that scattered the squad. "Hold, Faith!" Jessamine roared, and suddenly reality shifted. The Canoness's faith, her absolute, unshakable conviction, manifested as the Emperor's light. Golden energy washed over the sisters, strengthening them, healing minor wounds, making their ammunition strike truer. This was an act of faith, the power that made the Adepta Sororitas more than just mortal warriors. Lilith felt that light like acid. It wasn't psychic power. It was pure belief given form, faith so strong it bent reality, and it was anathema to her demonic essence. "You could have been an ally," she shouted, her blood magic clashing against faith made manifest. "I want to protect humanity, not destroy it." "Then kneel to the Emperor," Jessamine commanded. "Renounce your false claim of motherhood. Accept his divine sovereignty. If you truly care for humanity, you will submit to its rightful ruler." The words struck deeper than any weapon. Because Jessamine was right. If Lilith truly cared about humanity's survival, shouldn't she work with its existing leadership? Wasn't her pride, her independence, just selfishness wearing a noble mask? No, she wouldn't accept that. She was Lilith. She'd created civilizations, birthed new species, reshaped reality itself. She would not kneel to anyone, even if the cost was. An explosion rocked the hive above. Then another, then a third, each one massive enough to shake the entire structure. The ritual. Malfurious' ritual was reaching its crescendo, and reality itself was screaming in protest. Jessamine's vox crackled. "All units, priority alert. Massive warp incursion at Cathedral Primus. Greater demon manifestation imminent. All forces converge." The Canoness looked at Lilith, at the abomination she'd been ordered to recruit or destroy, and made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "We're not done," she said, "but the ritual takes priority. Fall back." The sisters withdrew with military precision, leaving Lilith alone among the frightened refugees. The Blood Mother collapsed to her knees, exhausted and wounded, surrounded by the people she'd tried to protect. People who now looked at her with equal parts hope and terror. "I don't know what to do," she admitted to the darkness. "I don't know how to survive in a galaxy that offers no middle ground." High above, the warp rift pulsed, and something vast began to claw its way through from the Imperium. The final confrontation was approaching, and everyone, Imperium, Chaos, Lilith, Diablo, was running out of time. The warp rift above Cathedral Primus had grown to the size of a small moon, and from within it came screaming things that had no right to exist. Malfurious' ritual had succeeded. He'd summoned a Lord of Change, one of Tzeentch's mightiest servants, a being of such power that reality itself bent around its presence. The greater demon emerged in an explosion of impossible colors, its 9 wings spread across the sky, each feather inscribed with knowledge that could drive mortals mad. It spoke in 9 voices simultaneously, each contradicting the others, each somehow correct. The ritual is complete. The architect's will is done. Now shall... Diablo crashed into it like a meteor. The Lord of Terror had fled the pursuing Grey Knights, but not in retreat, in positioning. He'd led them in circles through the cathedral while gathering his strength, feeding on the fear radiating from the millions of souls on Ophelia 7. Now he was at full power, and he used it all at once. His claws tore through the Lord of Change's reality-warping shields. His hellfire burned feathers that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. The greater demon screeched in surprise and rage, never expecting an attack from a non-aligned entity. "Fool!" it shrieked. "You dare strike a servant of Tzeentch? The architect knows all futures. He saw your betrayal and welcomed it." "Then he knows I'm about to tear you apart," Diablo snarled, ramming his fist through the demon's chest. His hand closed around something that might have been a heart, might have been a quantum probability nexus, and squeezed. The Lord of Change exploded into 1,000 screaming crows, reforming behind Diablo. "You cannot kill me. I am immortal. I am..." Lilith's blood magic lanced up from the streets below, crystallized spears impaling the demon from every angle. The Lord of Change shrieked again, its form destabilizing. The Blood Mother rose through the air on wings of blood and shadow, her exhaustion forgotten, her power burning bright. She'd felt Diablo's attack on the greater demon and made a split-second decision. Better the devil you know than the ones trying to claim you. "Mother of lies," the demon howled. "You too! Tzeentch will not forgive this insult." "Good," Lilith replied coldly. "I wasn't asking for forgiveness." Together, ancient enemies united by necessity, Lilith and Diablo destroyed Tzeentch's herald. The Lord of Change's essence scattered back into the warp. Banished if not killed, its mission failed. Malfurious, watching from the cathedral ruins, felt his carefully laid plans crumble. 10 years of preparation, months of ritual work, all undone by these foreign entities who refused to play by anyone's rules. "Kill them," he commanded his remaining sorcerers. "Kill them both." The Black Legion forces opened fire, bolt rounds, plasma, Lascanon strikes, everything they had. The Grey Knights, arriving from the other direction, added their own firepower. Suddenly, Lilith and Diablo found themselves caught in a crossfire between Chaos and Imperium, both sides united in their desire to purge the anomalies. "This is your fault," Diablo roared at Lilith as they took cover behind a collapsed building. "My fault," she shot back. "You're the one who made deals with Chaos sorcerers. And you tried to play mother to humans who worship a corpse. At least I tried to help people instead of feeding on their fear like a parasite." The argument, their eternal argument, spanning dimensions and millennia, erupted with all the venom of eons of hatred. And in that moment, surrounded by enemies on all sides, they forgot about survival and remembered only their war. Diablo struck first, hellfire washing over Lilith. She retaliated with blood magic, her spears seeking his heart. They crashed together in the middle of the battlefield, their power shaking the foundations of the hive, neither caring that every faction was targeting them. "I should have ended you in Sanctuary," Diablo bellowed, his claws tearing through her defenses. "You've tried for millennia," Lilith screamed back, her magic ripping away portions of his essence. "Always failing, always weak." They were so focused on each other, they didn't notice Brother Captain Stern positioning his strike force for the kill. Didn't notice the bloodthirsters manifesting again, drawn by the violence. Didn't notice the Sisters of Battle establishing firing lines, or the Black Legion sorcerers preparing a banishment ritual. All they saw was each other, the enemy, the rival, the eternal opposition. Then reality fractured. The warp rift, already massive from Malfurious's ritual, was being torn wider by the power Lilith and Diablo were throwing around. The dimensional barriers between real world and Imperium, already weakened, simply gave up. A tear opened in space itself, not warp or real space, but something between, something neither. And through that tear, both entities felt it. Sanctuary. Their home dimension, close enough to touch. The tear was temporary, would seal in seconds, but in those seconds there was a path, a way home. They both lunged for it simultaneously. Their powers collided at the threshold, each trying to push the other back, each determined to escape this nightmare galaxy first. The tear began closing, the dimensional barriers reasserting themselves. "Let go!" Diablo roared. "You let go!" Lilith screamed. Neither would yield. Neither could yield. Their pride, their hatred, their absolute refusal to give their enemy any advantage. It doomed them both. The tear sealed. They fell back into the material realm, the way home lost, perhaps forever. Silence fell across the battlefield as every faction processed what they'd just witnessed. These two entities, these reality-bending horrors, had just thrown away their only chance at escape rather than let the other escape first. Inquisitor Vale, watching from orbit, couldn't help but laugh. "Magnificent," he murmured. "Absolutely magnificent. They're not demons. They're not chaos. They're just prideful fools who can't stop fighting each other long enough to save themselves." On the battlefield, Lilith and Diablo stared at each other, the weight of realization crushing them both. They were trapped. Truly, permanently trapped in the 41st millennium, and it was entirely their own fault. "This is because of you," Diablo said quietly, the rage drained away into exhausted certainty. "No," Lilith replied, just as quietly. "This is because of us. Both of us. Always both of us." The Grey Knights advanced. The Bloodthirsters manifested. The Sisters of Battle charged. The Black Legion prepared another assault, every faction converging on two entities who no longer had the strength to fight them all. Lilith looked at Diablo. Diablo looked at Lilith. "Truce?" she asked. "Until we find another way home," he agreed. They stood back to back, preparing to face the galaxy together, bound by necessity if nothing else. Their powers flared one last time. Blood magic and hellfire combining in ways that shouldn't work but did, creating a defensive barrier that held back the first wave of attacks. "We're going to die here," Lilith observed. "Eventually," Diablo agreed. "But not today." "Not today," she echoed. The battle resumed. Two ancient enemies fighting as reluctant allies against a galaxy that wanted them dead or corrupted. They were powerful, but the Imperium was infinite. Chaos was eternal, and neither offered mercy. High above, the stars watched with indifference. The galaxy had swallowed empires and species beyond counting. Two more entities, no matter how powerful, were just drops in an ocean of endless war. But those two drops, at least, would not go quietly into that dark. 3 weeks after the Cathedral Primus incident, Inquisitor Lord Kairos Vale stood in the ruins of Ophelia VII's capital and surveyed the aftermath of the most bizarre campaign of his career. The Black Legion had been repelled, the ritual disrupted, the city saved. By all metrics, this was a victory. But the two foreign entities remained. Lilith and Diablo had vanished into the Hive's depths after their last stand, using the chaos of the multi-faction battle to escape. The Grey Knights had pursued, but lost their trail in the Underhive's maze. The Bloodthirsters had withdrawn when their attacks proved futile against the entity's combined defense. Even the Sisters of Battle had been forced to prioritize civilian evacuation over demon hunting. Now the Inquisitor had a decision to make. "Recommendation?" he asked his assembled staff. Tech Priest Xerxes consulted his data streams. The entities demonstrate consistent patterns: refusal to align with any faction, protective behavior toward human civilians, extreme power when combined, mutual hostility when separated. Conclusion: they are too dangerous to ignore, too useful to destroy, and too unpredictable to control. "So we do nothing?" Sister Militant Cordelia asked, her tone disapproving. "We watch," Vale corrected. "We monitor. We ensure they remain managed. If they ally with chaos, we deploy the Grey Knights en masse. If they threaten the Imperium, exterminatus is authorized. But if they continue fighting our enemies while maintaining independence, you let them live." Interrogator Matthias finished. "You weaponize them without claiming them." "Precisely. The Inquisition has used worse in the Emperor's service." Deep in the Underhive, Lilith sat in what had once been a chapel, now abandoned and forgotten. She'd been studying the icons, trying to understand this Emperor these humans worshipped so absolutely. The images showed a golden warrior, impossibly perfect, radiating divine light. He looked like Imperius, like Tyrael, like every angel who had ever told her that order mattered more than freedom. "Trying to understand them?" Diablo asked, emerging from the shadows. They'd established an uneasy coexistence, occupying the same refuge, maintaining a tense truce, neither trusting the other but both recognizing they needed each other to survive. "Trying to understand how an entire species can worship someone so completely that faith itself becomes a weapon," Lilith replied. "In Sanctuary, belief was personal. Here it's industrial, weaponized, essential." "This galaxy runs on faith," Diablo observed. "Faith in the Emperor, faith in chaos. Even the Space Marines have faith in their Primarchs and their gene legacy. Everything is powered by belief." "And we have no believers," Lilith said quietly. "No one to draw strength from. We're alone in a realm where power comes from devotion." Diablo settled against the wall, his massive form somehow seeming diminished in the darkness. "I've been feeding on fear, growing stronger, but it's not enough. This galaxy's scale, billions die in single battles, entire worlds burn. The fear is infinite, but so are the enemies." "I've been helping refugees," Lilith admitted. "Purifying water, healing wounds, protecting them from gangers. Some of them are starting to, if not worship me, at least see me as something other than Daemon." "Dangerous," Diablo warned. "The Imperium will notice. They'll declare you a false prophet and burn everyone who follows you." "I know. But what else can I do? I'm the mother of Sanctuary. Protection is what I am." They sat in silence for a long moment, two ancient enemies sharing space in a nightmare galaxy, bound by circumstances neither had chosen. "We need a plan," Diablo finally said. "We can't keep running forever. Eventually the Grey Knights will corner us, or chaos will overwhelm us, or the Imperium will just bomb the entire hive from orbit." "I know, but I don't see a path forward that doesn't require serving someone." "Then we make one," Diablo replied. "We're not demons of this realm. We don't follow their rules. Perhaps it's time we start making our own." "How?" "I don't know yet. But I'm the Lord of Terror, and you're the mother of humanity. If we can't find a third option between Imperium and chaos, we're not as clever as we think." Lilith almost smiled. "Is that cooperation I hear, Diablo?" "It's pragmatism," he corrected. "We're trapped in hell together. Might as well make the best of it. This galaxy makes the burning hells look pleasant by comparison." "Agreed." Above them, in the ruins of the city, life slowly returned. Refugees emerged from hiding. Sisters of Battle began reconstruction efforts, Imperial Guard regiments deployed to secure the hive levels. The Mechanicus started repairing infrastructure. The Imperium, vast and implacable, ground forward as it always had, absorbing this latest wound as it had absorbed a million others. Somewhere in that chaos, two figures moved unseen. The Blood Mother and the Lord of Terror, planning and scheming, refusing to kneel, refusing to serve, refusing to die. The Inquisition watched them. Chaos plotted to claim them. The Grey Knights prepared to purge them, and the galaxy, vast and uncaring, continued its eternal war. In the months that followed, scattered reports reached the Administratum archives, fragmentary accounts that would take decades to process and centuries to verify. Stories of a pale woman who healed the wounded in underhive hospitals, never asking for payment, vanishing before Imperial authorities arrived. Tales of a monstrous figure that defended refugee convoys from gangers and cultists, demanding nothing in return except that his intervention be forgotten. The Ordo Malleus classified them as entities designate, tertiary threat, monitor status indefinite. Not demons, but demon-adjacent. Not allies, but occasionally useful. Not enemies, provided they remained manageable. Lilith and Diablo learned the harsh truths of the 41st millennium. That survival meant compromise, but not surrender. That power without devotion was a prison, but servitude was death. That in a galaxy where there were only war and no good choices, the best you could hope for was to die on your own terms. They remained in the segmentum obscurus, moving from world to world, always one step ahead of the Grey Knights, always refusing both Chaos's temptations and the Imperium's demands. They fought each other as often as they fought beside each other, their eternal war continuing even in this alien realm. But they survived. And in the grim darkness of the far future, survival itself was the only victory that mattered. The Blood Mother and the Lord of Terror had entered a galaxy where hope was heresy and mercy was weakness. They had been tested by Chaos, hunted by the Imperium's finest, and offered to the altar of endless war. They had refused every offer, rejected every master, and spat in the face of a galaxy that demanded submission. Whether that made them heroes or fools remained to be seen. But they were free, and in the 41st millennium, freedom itself was the rarest treasure of all. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.